the first thing my mother told me was, don't even whisper, because the birds and mice can hear me.
Hi, I'm Ian Bremer, and welcome to the GZERO World podcast, an audio version of what you can find on public television, where I analyze global topics, sit down with big guests, and make use of little puppets. This week, I sit down with North Korean defector and human rights activist Yeonmi Park. She'll recount her harrowing escape from the totalitarian regime that involved crossing a frozen river into China and subsisting on dragonflies. Let's get to it.
The GZERO World is brought to you by our founding sponsor, First Republic. First Republic, a private bank and wealth management company. Imagine a bank without teller lines, where your banker knows your name and its most prized currency is extraordinary client service. Hear directly from First Republic's clients by visiting firstrepublic.com.
I was born in 1993 in the northern part of North Korea. There was a river that divided China and North Korea, and I was right there in the northern part in the border area. My day would be, going to school in the morning, and I had to bring work clothes because in North Korea, we don't really say someone's minor that they cannot do labor work. Even the 7 years old, 8 years old, they all have to work. And because we are revolutionaries, our existence is only for the party. It's not for ourselves or for anything else. We just live for the party. They never teach us what critical thinking is. All I learned was revolution history about our dear leaders, how great they were, what kind of miracles they can make, and how they were protecting us from our enemies, which was Americans. If you look at the picture, with the Kim Jong-il, the previous Kim, with the other people in North Korea, he is literally the fattest guy in that picture. He's pretty big. But in North Korea, they taught us in schools everywhere that Kims are starving for us. He's working so hard to keep us safe from our American enemies. And he's starving. And I believed in North Korea. So a lot of them are brainwashed in North Korea right now, even till this day. But the ones who are not still have no resources to do anything about it. I was never able to call, Americans like Americans. I had to call them American bastards. Even in my math class, when they taught us with the math problem, the teachers tried how to do, learn numbers. It was like, there are 4 American bastards. You killed 2 of them. Then how many Americans you left to care? Then as a child, I say 2 American bastards. So education, everything in the society, the songs that I sang, the books that I read, the movies that I watched, everything that was about their leader and propaganda. After all that class ends in the afternoon, we go to construction sites or we go to where the flood happened. We go help the farmers out. And while we are doing all those labor, we just try to look for things to eat, even if there's some after the harvest, some few grains left there, we are just trying to find that to eat. So all I just really remember was being hungry. Because I was in the countryside, not in the capital, seeing dead bodies on those streets was everyday life. As a child for myself, I was going to mountains, eating flowers, plants, eating dragonflies or eating grasshoppers, and that's how I barely survived. But my case, I was lucky because I'm here today. I survived all that. But so many millions of my neighbors, friends, my relatives, and North Korean people just died during that time for just nothing, for not having food. As a child, like when someone asked me what would I want to be, what my dream was like having one bucket of bread. Because I never knew that, I never like tested my stomach that I could feel like full. And hunger means here is just hunger, but in North Korea, hunger means death. You're starving in your household, and what do? You gotta go somewhere in the alley or somewhere, and you sell one of your spoons, you sell one of your clothes, you sell one of your blankets. A trade with 1 pound of corn, 1 pound of rice. And that's how it began initially. And then people learned, then I can make, rice cake at home. I can cook a tempura at home. I'm gonna sell in those alleys. So there was no like certain location that was people allowed to trade. Those people we call a grasshopper market, that people had to keep running away from the officials who were trying to catch them. In the northern parts of North Korea, there are a lot of selling drugs to China, or they are selling a lot of different natural resources from North Korea. We sell them gold, we sell them copper for the trading. Those China give to them what they ask for. And those are a lot of times are foreign information like DVDs or USB sticks with American Hollywood movies in it. My father did engage in a black market. And when we say black market, it's not like you are selling drugs or guns, anything bad. He was literally selling sugar, rice, clocks, and all the daily things that you need. And then eventually he tried to sell metals like silver, copper, nickel. And that was a crime because he was trading. He was sent to prison and tortured, and he was sentenced more than 10 years. And if my father is a criminal, they say that my blood is tainted, that I'm a criminal's daughter. The term dissident doesn't exist in North Korea. It's unlike Venezuela, it's unlike Iran, or unlike other authoritarian government, or Russia. The distance doesn't exist because there is a zero tolerance by the government. If you say something wrong, not only yourself being publicly executed, that 3 generations of your family being affected because of you. So if I do something today in North Korea saying that I don't like the regime, then my mother, my son, my husband, and my husband's family, my mother's family, everyone around me is being affected. North Korea have a public execution, and there's no concept of minor. If there's a public execution, as a child, as a elder, anybody have to go there to see a person getting killed. And people get disappeared all the time in North Korea. And my mother saw a young man who was getting executed because he ate a cow. He had TB and he ate a cow, and that was a crime because all the cows were owned by the government. So our lives are not even as valuable as cows that North Korea has.
All right, open your eyes.
When I watched Titanic as a young girl, in the beginning I just watching the movie and I was so confused. First of all, I just couldn't understand why anyone is making a movie out of such a shameful story. In North Korea as a child, I did not learn about Shakespeare. I don't know what Juliet Romeo was as a child. And also in the movie, they don't talk about anything about the revolutionary the party. So that was confusing. Like a movie can actually be dedicated for human feelings. And in North Korea, no one told us our feelings were important or anything. I never seen my father was telling my mother that he loved her. My mother never told him in North Korea that she loved me. The word that we have love is only the word that we can use to express our feelings towards the leader or the party. In daily life, we don't have this vocabulary like human rights, freedom, liberty, love. It's almost like George Orwell's 1984. In his book, he talks about the importance of words. If you know the word, that means you know the concept. And in North Korea, the regime purposefully removed these words in our daily life so we don't know the concept. And this movie is, bringing all these different concepts that we North Koreans never knew before. A person can die for the other person. We don't have to become all revolutionaries. I think all these things do inspire a lot of especially young people, young generation. And I do think this is a revolution, a quiet, silent revolution. But this awareness is not enough to change this powerful dictator because, it's as a free word that we cannot do anything about this monstrous dictator. How a person in North Korea are so vulnerable can do anything about this regime. So I think even though this revolution is only getting bigger and stronger, but I don't think at any point right now this awareness gonna overthrow the regime because they don't have the resources to do so. My sister, she was 16 years old. She escaped with her friend. I wanted to escape with her, but I couldn't because I have really bad stomach ache. My mother took me to the hospital, and in North Korea we don't have like X-rays or electricities or to figure out what's wrong with me. Just simply, doctor rubbed my belly and he said that I have appendix, that it has to be removed right away. So that afternoon, he removed my appendix without any painkiller. And then when they opened, it was just like malnutrition and infection that I was experiencing. In the hospital, we saw so many dead bodies just scrambled in the middle of the way to going to the bathroom. And my mother simply asked, to the nurse, why are you not taking those bodies? Because we could see where rats were eating humans. And humans are hungry, so we eat those rats back. And the nurse was saying that we just don't have gas to drive them away. And that's we knew that we gotta get out of there unless we are going to be one of those people who were eaten by rats. That was 2007, end of March. We found the people who wanted to send us to China. They helped us to cross the frozen river to China. Normally, they are like guards with a machine gun standing there every 10 meters and try to shoot people who crosses illegally. And the brokers that had a connection, and they safely sent us to China. As soon as we arrived in China, my mother and myself, the first thing was my mother being raped by the broker in China. And they told us, because of the one-child policy that China had, there are not enough women in China, and they need these North Korean women as bribes, and they sell us like animals to Chinese men. We are sold to brothels, we are sold to men with mental illness, anywhere that anybody who has money to buy us. And I was 13 at the time. They told me that I had to be separated from my mother. I had to be also sold as a bribe. And that's how my mother and I both been human trafficked in China. After being bought by a man, which was another broker, who supposedly finding me a husband who was going to buy me, he told me that he wanted me to become his mistress. And I was 13. I wanted to kill myself. I couldn't take it. And when I was trying to kill myself, he told me that if I become his mistress, he would bring my mother and bring my father to me. So I did become his mistress, and he bought my mother from a farmer who bought my mom, and he brought my sick father from North Korea. After there being in China for 2 years, he somehow letting me go with my mother. But during that time, my father already passed away from his colon cancer he caught in the prison camp. And that was after Beijing Olympic in 2008. My mother and I found the missionaries in South Korea in China from South Korea. They were helping us to go to South Korea where we could become safe. And they told us if we believe in God, if we believe in Christianity, they were going to help us. So we had to study Bible. We had to become believers. And they told us to go into South Korea, we had to basically walk across the Gobi Desert from China to Mongolia. First, some miracle happens, then if we safely arrive in Mongolia, then we have to find the soldiers and they will help us to South Korea. And that's what we did in 2009. In February, I think, it was minus 40 degrees in the desert in Mongolia. We walked across the Gobi Desert, just following a compass in our hand. And after we crossed many wire fences, we did arrive in Mongolia. We found the guards, and they helped us to reach South Korean consulate. And a few months later, they took us to South Korea from Mongolia. And from South Korea, I was there. And a few years ago, I started working as a human rights activist and moved to America.
돌아치며 욕고되는 체험담이라는 것이 과연 사실인가?
After I went public with my story and tried to defy the regime, the North Korean regime made these YouTube videos featuring all my relatives, all my neighbors, and to denounce me that I'm the propaganda puppet of the West.
실제로 있는 거는 그 여자 동생인데.
And I was so afraid after leaving the escape that Kim's can read my thoughts. I was literally believed that, Kim's have ability with my minds, like gods. Some people in Bible or other religions say, God knows how many hair you have. God knows what you think right now. And like that in North Korea, North Korean regime is one of the religions in the world. They taught us religion that they never die. Their body dies, but their spirit is with us forever. And they even know what we're thinking in our head. It is marvelous. We have everything that we need to be grateful in this world. But when I was living in New York, and I had a lot of friends who was actually going to therapy. And when I try to go out to the restaurant, my friends is the first thing they go look it up is reviews. And I always thought the food was about the quantity, it was never about the quality. And a lot of people, it was about the quality. I think it's a wonderful thing. But I think I didn't quite understand yet back then that having too much can be also a problem. So many people in America struggling with obese, and they try to stay healthy and all that. So, I think just sometimes to me is understanding also this modernity and abundance. This can be also hard for some people, was difficult. And it just took some time for me to understand there is struggles even in this abundance.
We are very concerned with the situation of food security and nutrition in DPR Korea. What is clear is that the succession of bad drought, heat wave, and floods this year has badly impacting the crop production.
Some 10.9 million people, nearly half of the population of North Korea, are undernourished and suffer from food insecurity. 1 in 5 children under 5 are stunted. So these are extraordinary, appalling figures. You rarely find this level of deprivation, even in war-torn countries.
It's manageable, but the problem you see UN sanctions. We can't transact, for importing the food through, banking systems.
That's our show this week. We'll be right back here next week, same place, same time, unless you're watching on social media, in which case it's wherever you happen to be. Don't miss it. In the meantime, check us out at GZEROmedia.com.
The GZERO World is brought to you by our founding sponsor, First Republic. First Republic, a private bank and wealth management company. Imagine a bank without teller lines, where your banker knows your name and its most prized currency is extraordinary client service. Hear directly from First Republic's clients by visiting firstrepublic.com.